Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So my name's Katie and today I'm going to be talking about my favourite fantasy sci-fi series of all time. So I was going to do like top 10 but I kind of got 12, so we'll see. But yeah, these are some of my absolute favourite series and I sort of tried to limit myself to like one per author because otherwise the list would be like a bunch of Sanderson books. I love gushing about my favourites, so this is going to be a video where we just spread the love of some of my favourite series, and hopefully if you haven't read any of them then you'll discover a new favourite too, or you'll be interested in checking out a new series. And in my opinion these are some of like the best fantasy series that I've ever read, and sci-fi, I'm including both because I love both, and some of them I feel like blur the lines a bit, they're kind of both almost. So yeah, without further ado, we will get started. No surprise to anyone, but probably my favourite series, not even probably, definitely my favourite series of all time is the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. And I feel like I haven't made a video in a while, like a Cosmere specific video. So if anyone has any ideas of things they want to see, then definitely let me know. I might do an updated like tarot card one because that was like my first video I ever made. That was kind of why I wanted to make booktube videos, so I could just show those off. So I might make an updated version of that and like just talking generally about why you should read Stormlight. But yeah, I love it so much, and this series, I don't know, it just means so much to me. Like I love all the characters so much, I'm so attached to them all. I think out of the four, Rhythm of War is probably my favourite, just because Kaladin in that book is just, oh, but Kaladin in all the books is just great, he's the best. Oh, I love him. But yeah, so this is basically a very epic fantasy series, set on this world called Rashar, where it's kind of ravaged by these high storms which sort of circle around the world. They're like these big storms. And we're following mainly this country called Alethkar, and so at the start of the book the king gets assassinated by this mysterious assassin in white, who's called Seth, is one of the funniest characters. But anyway, so we're following his death, so the king's death sort of kicks off the war between the Alethi from Alethkar and these people called the Parshendi. So they're fighting this war on this thing called the Shattered Plains, which is like basically plains which have been shattered. So we're kind of following this war. We're following a few different characters at the scene of the war. So we're following Kaladin, who is like a slave, and he gets put into these things called the bridge crews. So they are essentially like running with bridges, like so the characters can get across the chasms, the like soldiers can get across the chasms. And he's put with this bridge four, who are kind of the like downtrodden group of them all, but Kaladin sort of whips them into shape. But at the same time Kaladin's like super depressed and like, oh, Kaladin's character is just the best thing ever. But yeah, and that like whole fan family of Bridge 4 is just great. And then we're also following Dalinar, who's the brother of the king who died, and he's kind of a high prince, so he's in charge of his little band, and there's about 10 different high princes. Dalinar's trying to unite everyone, and Dalinar's having these strange visions as well, sort of talking about prophecies in this legendary book called The Way of Kings, because there used to be these things called the Knights Radiant who like had special powers and like magical armour and things. So he's kind of looking at that. And then we're also following Shallan, who's a different kind of setting. So she is essentially going to find this famous scholar called Jasna, who is the son of the king, no, who's the daughter of the king who died, and is the niece to Dalinar. So Shallan's going to try and be her like apprentice scholar type thing, but she's also trying to steal one of Jasnar's like possessions, because Shallan's family is in a lot of trouble and she needs this thing. So that's, I feel like Shallan's story in Way of Kings is so kind of entertaining. But yeah, Shallan's a very interesting character as well. And there's just so many great characters as well. Like, obviously it's a huge series, like each book's about 1,000 pages, so you get a lot of time with the characters and you get attached to so many of them. There's other characters as well, like Adeline, who is probably one of my favourites. He's Dalinar's son and it's just the cutest little himbe prince. And yeah, I just love everything about the series really. Yeah, there's a lot of mental health representation as well. And I really like that discussion, especially Kaladin and his kind of depression and sort of in Rhythm of War suicidal ideation. I thought it was explored very well. And Shallan has kind of dissociative identity disorder, which I think is also really interesting to explore, and Dalinar has PTSD. Basically, all the Knights Radiant have some sort of mental health problem. But yeah, I just think that's explored so well. And then I also really love the Spren, who are part of the books, and they are these kind of like magical things which like appear, and certain Spren bond to the humans. So Kaladin like bonds with a Spren called Syl, who I love. Shallan bonds with Patton, who Patton's so funny. I also, yeah, there's just loads of Spren which I love as well. So yeah, just read the Stormlight Archive if you haven't already. I love it. Okay, so next we have Jade Legacy and Jade War by Fonda Lee, and so the Greenbone Saga, and also Jade Legacy, which isn't out until December, I think, but from everything I've heard, I know it's going to be just as good as the first two, so it'll definitely still have a favourite place in my heart. Even if it's like terrible, it'll still be one of my favourite series. So we're following the No Peak clan and the family that kind of runs it, and they are sort of gangsters who are in charge of jade trade in the world. It's called, I think it's set in Kikon, which is like a fictional world. And jade is like this hot commodity where it kind of gives, the more jade you have, kind of almost the more powerful and more powers you have type thing. And so yeah, we're following the Calls, who are in charge. So Lan, who is like the head of the clan, he's called the Pillar. And then his siblings, so Hilo and Shay, and they're, especially Hilo and Shay especially, their dynamic and relationship with each other is so good and interesting. And I think my favourite thing about this series is the family dynamics. Like, it's such a story of family, and like I love all the kind of gangster elements and the politics and like the action and things, but at the core of it, it's a family story, and that's what I love kind of the most about it. And then we also have Andon, who is like their cousin or something, and he's the main character as well. I'd say in the first book, the four main characters are Lan, Hilo, Shay, and Andon. And yeah, Andon's such a little cinnamon roll. He's probably my favourite. Andon and Wen is the girlfriend and later wife of Hilo. So she's kind of one of the family as well. And I really love her. Yeah, those two are my favourites, I think. But I also love Shay. Oh, I love them all. It's just a great story. Like, the whole setting is so good. It like just like perfectly fits the kind of tone of the story, and just the characters and like the character dynamics and that like family dynamic. I just think is so good, and it explores a lot of themes as well of kind of identity. Like in the first book, Shay is kind of coming back to the family after some time away. I think that's really interesting. And then the second book, Andon is kind of going to this different country, and he's almost like part of the diaspora type thing, which I think is really interesting as well. And there's just so much in the book. There's so many like heartbreaking moments, but also so many like shocking moments. Like, I remember in the first time I read Jade City, something happens halfway through. It's a pretty big thing, so if you read it, you'll know. And I just remember being shocked, like, how could this happen? And then in the second book, I kind of read these books like before they got popular, and then everyone was reading them. So I remember like messaging loads of people as they were reading Jade War, like, have you got to the car scene yet? Forgetting that there's actually 2 car scenes, one of which is someone getting a blowjob. So they probably thought I was crazy talking about this car scene, but anyway, it was the other car scene if you received one of those messages. So I just love this series. So yeah, I'm so excited for Jade Legacy. Oh. Next is a new favourite, but it's probably skyrocketed to one of my favourite series of all time. I feel like these top 3 are probably my top 3, and then the rest are all kind of favourites. Actually, no, because Gideon and Harrow are also like top. So top 4, okay. And that is the Age of Madness books by Joe Abercrombie. So I'm just going to hold up Wisdom of Crowds, because I can't be bothered. Actually, no, I'll get them out. So A Little Hatred, The Trouble with Peace, and Wisdom of Crowds. So I'll hold up A Little Hatred because that is the first one. So yeah, I just love this series so much. The characters are all so funny. So basically, I'll just tell you the like characters and what they are like, and then the synopsis kind of is just like, I don't even know what it's about. I do know what it's about, can't even remember. What is the first one? I can't remember what happens in the first one, I think because my brain's just so like Wisdom of Crowds. But anyway, so we have Savine, who is the daughter of Glocta from the first law books. And she is like this ruthless, cunning, ambitious, like queen. She's kind of a very savvy like merchant. She's very sort of made a lot of money for herself, and she's very like morally grey, but you love her. And then we have Orso, who's like the prince, and he is sort of very kind of self-depreciating, but he has this like heart of gold, and he's just like trying his best but constantly being kind of thwarted and like not being good enough. And at the start of the series he's very like a layabout prince type thing, like he likes his wine and women and stuff, but he's a great character. And then Leo, who at the start of the series is just a little disaster himbo who's so like painfully repressed his gayness as well. Yeah, I think he's one of the best, I think, queer male characters in adult fantasy. He's very complex and very interesting, and it's such a kind of fundamental part of his character, but also just so frustrating. And yeah, Leo, I think out of all the characters has the biggest arc throughout the series, like in terms of change to his character. Like the character he is at the start of Little Hatred is it's just totally different from who he is at the end of Wisdom of Crowds. But it's a very entertaining, if slightly tragic arc as well. Well, very tragic. But he's such this little himbo, and then he gets so manipulated and all. And then Ricky, who is the daughter of the Dogman from the original books. And she is such a like a queen. Oh, I love her. She's like a kind of feral, like wild, and she's such a funny character as well. I just love all the characters. And then you have Vic, who's like this sexy spy lady. That's what we'll say. She's very like cold. She's kind of she's an inquisitor, so like Glocta is in the first little books, but she's very like cold, but on the inside has a secret, again, like heart of gold type thing. And you have various other characters as well. I like seeing a kind of Glocta again, and Bios again, and Giselle and the Dogman. But I would say the new characters are definitely the stars of the show, and they're probably my favourite like combination of characters ever, other than Stormlight and Greenbone Saga. They're my favourite characters. Like, oh, I love them all so much, and they're all such terrible people, but like it's so satisfying to read. And I love Joe Abercrombie's humour in these books as well. I feel like it adds such a sense of entertainment and enjoyment to what are quite dark books. I think especially later on in the series, the kind of revolution aspects and the dangers of revolution, and sort of the like populism and how that sort of corrupts good ideas in theory, and how they become sort of very bad ideas in reality, and how sort of greed and danger and extremism can be very dangerous, I think is very interesting and very well explored. Probably one of the best like explorations of kind of fantasy and like failed revolutions, and it's just also good. So yeah, read them please. I feel like I'm not getting through this very fast. Okay, we'll try and go a bit faster. So the next is Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb. So I have to put the like whole series on here, but I didn't really love Assassin's Apprentice that much, and I haven't read Royal Assassin or Assassin's Quest, but the rest of Realm of the Elderlings I love. I've given them all 4 or 5 stars, and to be honest, I'm pretty sure when I reread Assassin's Apprentice I'll like it a lot more, just because I know seeing like baby Fitz is gonna be the cutest thing ever, and I'm not ready to read baby Night Eyes in Royal Assassin because that's just gonna be too emotional. But I love them all. I love Fitz's journey, and the kind of whole thing is like they're very kind of personal books in a way. They really tell the story of like people. Like they are epic fantasy, but it's very kind of people centric and like emotions, and like Robin Hobb will make you feel pain like no other author. Like yeah, and she has such a talent of making you feel very strongly towards characters, like whether you love them or hate them or like just want to hug them. She just has such a talent for it, and her kind of depictions of relationships between characters are so good. Like Fitz and the Fool are probably my favourite like platonic soulmates in all of fiction. They're just the best, and they're probably, to be honest, my favourite like relationship, whether it's like familial relationship, romantic relationship, friendship relationship. They're just the best out of all of them. Yeah, oh, I just love them. And then I recently read Fool's Assassin, which Fitz and Bee are another just all-time favourite kind of relationship. Although she does have some terrible relationships as well. Cough, cough, Fitz and Molly. She does have such a talent for writing, and the weaving like atmosphere and setting, and the kind of while like big epic political events are going on, you just still kind of following the characters and how it really affects them, and certain stories of like grief and depression, and I just feel like it's so well done. And I also really love especially in the live ships and the, what's the other one called, Rain Wilds, the kind of dragons, and they're a bit more sort of fantastical, I would say, than the Farseer ones, but I really love the dragons, especially Rain Wilds. Oh, Relpter, I love her. But anyway, yeah, they're just really entertaining and great reads, and I feel like they're just such a timeless like classic of fantasy. I know that like Fitz and the Fool will just stay with me forever. So yeah, would highly recommend Realm of the Elderlings. And I would recommend not giving up if you're like me and read Assassin's Apprentice and didn't really love it that much. Just go straight to live ships, and then from there you'll just never look back. So yeah, would highly recommend. Then next we have a series which might win the prize for my like most reread series of all time, and that is Gideon and Harry the Ninth. And I love these ones so much. They're just so entertaining to read. You just have the absolute best time while reading. Gideon as the main character is one of the most iconic characters in all of existence. I just love her so much. And Harrow is such a funny character as well. She's like this very repressed nun, and then all the other characters I really love. So like Camilla, Rianthe, all the characters in Harrow, like John and Mercy Morn and the other ones. I just love them all. And so basically in Gideon the Ninth we're following Gideon, who's this orphan who was kind of dropped on the Ninth House's door as a baby, and she's grown up in the kind of service to the Ninth House, but she's always been trying to escape, but her escape attempts are always being thwarted by Harrow Hark, who is the reverend daughter, which is essentially like the princess of the Ninth House. And then one day they get this kind of invitation to come to this place where, so from each house there will be like a necromancer and a cavalier to come and try and ascertain the secrets to this thing called lictorhood, which is essentially like godhood. So Gideon and Harrow, so Harrow is a necromancer and she gets Gideon to come along as her cavalier, which is essentially a bodyguard, to this to Canaan House, which is like the first house, to try and compete with all the other houses to see who can like become a lictor and discover the secrets to this lictorhood. And then so when they all arrive at Canaan House, there's all these pairs of necromancers and cavaliers, and all the pairs are just so iconic, but then characters start dying and it becomes a bit of a murder mystery, and it's so good. And then Harrow the Ninth becomes a bit more sci-fi-y, but I would say these definitely blur the line between sci-fi and fantasy. But yeah, I just love them all. And Gideon is such a funny character, and I just love the journey, and the humour in these books is just so good, and you just have a massive grin on your face while reading. But there's also some really like moving and like poetic and like angsty moments that are just so good. And the characters are just, yeah, also great, and I just can't recommend them enough. And the atmosphere, like the bones and necromancy and everything, is just so cool. And all the characters are very gay as well, which just, so yeah. And I'm excited because I thought it was going to be a trilogy, but now there's actually 4 books. So I'm still very excited for Alecto the Ninth, and I'm kind of sad we have to wait an extra year, because I feel like I really want to meet Alecto as a character, or like hear more about his story, because yeah, John and Alecto, I really want to know what happened and like what drama went down. But I'm also very excited for Nona the Ninth, which I don't even know who Nona is, so we'll see. But yeah, so that's that one. Okay, so the next we have the City of Brass or Daevabad books by S.A. Chakraborty. And the first one is City of Brass, the second one is Kingdom of Copper, and the third one is Empire of Gold. And I love these books so much. Like, again, they're just ones where the characters are just so great. So we're following Nari, who's this, she's working as kind of a con artist on the streets of Cairo, and one day she accidentally summons this djinn called Dara, who sort of whisks her away to this magical city called Daevabad, where Nari gets then very involved in the politics there, and she sort of discovers a kind of hidden heritage that involves her with the city and the politics. And then also we're following Alizade, who's the prince in Daevabad, and his sort of storyline. In the first book, he's kind of getting involved with the Shafi, who are like half jinn, half human people, and they're kind of fighting for their rights. So Alizade is getting kind of involved in that. But it's just a great series. I love all the characters so much, especially Nari and Ali. and some of the other side characters as well, like Muntadir, who is Ali's brother and is the like crown prince, is a great character, and Jamshid, who is, oh, I know he spoiled things then, who is like an advisor's son, but is quite close with Muntadir and also strikes up quite a great friendship with Nari. Yeah, I just love them all. And the villainess of the series is one of the most iconic villains ever. I love her so much. There's a lot of politics going on, and the Daevabad and all these different kind of factions of different types of jinn are really interesting, and I love the sort of just magic and mythology of the world. It's so sort of atmospheric, and like seeing it through Nari's eyes, because she's kind of discovering it for the first time, is so great. And just everything, I just love it all. Like, I love the magic and the romance and the sort of relationships and like politics and family, and oh, it's just all so good. And yeah, just top cherry on the top is the evil sexy villain. And even so, the familial relationships, I think, another one of my favourite things, and they're so complex as well. Like certain characters, and so you find out certain family connections throughout the series, and they're just so good, some of them. Yeah, and things that you think are like a plot twist, and then they become even more of a twist later on. It's just so good. So yeah, I would highly recommend. And then also Becky Chambers' books, so I'll just get this one out there. Basically all of them. So the Wayfarers series, I guess, would be the series on this list, but I'm also including To Be Taught If Fortunate and Psalm for the Wild Milk, because I love them all. But the Wayfarers are A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, Closed and Common Orbit, Record of a Spaceman View, and The Galaxy and Ground Within. And these books are just so like cozy and just make you kind of believe in the spirit of humanity. And they're sci-fi, but I feel like they're very sort of grounded sci-fi and like human experience, and like, and although there's like aliens and stuff, it's still very like personal experiences, like relationships and things, and just kind of coming to terms with. These books are almost like free therapy. I feel like they're just sort of exploring like what it means to be kind of human, and being kind to yourself, and like being kind to others, and like that compassion and empathy, I feel like, are such running themes throughout the series. And yeah, they just so hopeful for the future, and oh yeah, I just love it. So would highly recommend all of Becky Chambers' books. Yeah, I won't go through synopses for each one, because I'm sure you can look them up if you want to, but they're just all really good, and her characters are so like lovable, and yeah, I just would implore everyone to read them, because I honestly feel like the world would be such a better place if everyone read these books. So yeah, they're not the most like action packed or anything, they're quite slow, but they're just very kind of contemplative, I feel like is great. There's a word for speculative fiction. I feel like that's kind of what they are, and it's really good. So yeah, would definitely recommend. Then next I'm gonna say the Red Rising series. So this is Red Rising, Golden Sun, Morning Star, Iron Gold, Dark Age. So I really love all the books in the series, except I feel like Red Rising isn't my favourite really, but from Golden Sun onwards I love them all. And we're basically following Darrow, who's a red. The world is kind of segregated by colours, and Darrow's a red, and he sort of ends up involved in this sort of semi-revolution thing, and he gets changed into a gold, and he has to try and infiltrate the gold's society to try and take them down from the inside, essentially. And the first book, Darrow's kind of going to this institute where they like train the gold, so he's with some like classmates, and it's kind of almost like a bit Hunger Gamesy. But then from book 2 onwards, it becomes very like epic space opera type thing, and there's so many great characters in the series. Like Darrow himself he's okay. He's very like, I feel like he's like, you know, you get the kind of classic fantasy protagonist. He's like the classic sci-fi protagonist, like similar to kind of James Holden type thing. But yeah, so Darrow is a slightly iffy character, but all the rest are so great. So Victra is probably my favourite. She's the best. Severo, who's like this absolutely crazy like feral, and he's kind of Darrow's best friend, but he's like absolutely insane, but he's so funny. Cassius, who he is kind of like this golden like Adonis type character almost, and him and Darrow have such like homoerotic friendship, but he's also great, and his sort of arc throughout the series I really love. And yeah, who else? Mustang / Virginia. I absolutely love her. She's such a great character. I actually really like the villains as well. Like, they're very villainous, but they're also like the kind of, I don't know, you like really hate them, but also they're written in a way where you sort of love to hate them type thing. Like how as the books go on you explore more of different colours as well, like not just the golds, because the golds are very powerful and they're almost like Greek gods type thing. And then, but then you get other characters as well. There's some really, what's his name? Is it Ragnar or something like that? Who's a like obsidian, and I love him. And then in the second trilogy, you get Volga, who is also great. And they're just like these cinnamon roll giants, and they're so cute. And then actually in the second trilogy as well, I really like some of the new characters that we meet. Especially Ephraim, he's really good, and Electra and Pax. I love seeing them as well. But anyway, it's just a great series. It's really epic. There's loads of great characters. There's loads of great kind of really epic fight battles, space battle scenes. But I feel like the characters are what sort of make it for me. I also really like the audiobook narration. The only exception to that is Angle. That audiobook is a hot mess, but all the rest are really good. Love that series. Okay, and then next we have Six of Crows duology. So this one I feel like has a very special place in my heart, because this was like it's been one of my favourites for like the longest. And it's like probably my favourite like YA fantasy series. There's another series that I'm going to talk about. I'm trying to go fast, but we'll get through it eventually. But these are definitely one of my favourites, and I just really love all the characters. And it was so exciting this year to like see it brought to life on screen, even though we only kind of, oh no, we did see them all except Wyland. But yeah, I just love them all, the characters, especially Nina and her journey, and just not even, yeah, her journey, but also her like self-confidence with who she is. I just really love seeing that. I like Inej and her sort of spirit and belief, and yeah, Kaz and his little like devious ways, and just I just love them all. So yeah, I mean I think you'd have to be like completely new to booktube not to know what Six of Crows is about. So I won't really go over a synopsis, because otherwise this video is gonna get really long. It's already really long, but yeah, I just love them, and they will always have a very special place in my heart. And I probably reread them like once a year. So I haven't actually read them this year, so maybe I'll have to do that. Maybe like December time. I feel like December's a month for rereads. So yeah, I just really love them, and just the whole magic and like the gangstery Amsterdam vibes. So yeah, they'll always kind of be special to me. So one of the first series I like truly loved. Yeah, I also haven't really talked about Mistborn and Warbreaker, but they are definitely also favourites. But I already talked about Sanderson, so I'm not going to include those. But they are some of my favourites as well. If you want another video where I just gush about Cosmere, probably I could make that. I'll probably talk for like an hour about Kaladin alone. Okay, so I'll talk about the other YA series which I really, really love. So Cinder Williams Chimers books, so especially the Shattered Realms books. And I don't know why I just love them so much. I've read them about 3 times. I don't know why I love them so much, but I just really do. So it's like Flamecaster, Shadowcaster, Stormcaster and Deathcaster. And I think I'm just so attached to the characters. And also I really love the world. It's kind of like a European mountain type world. Like it's how you kind of imagine like the Alps and like Austria and Switzerland type thing. It very much gives those vibes. And so the characters in Shattered Realms are the kind of next generation down from the characters in Seven Realms. So the Seven Realms series starts with the Demon King. I also really like the Seven Realms series, but I feel like Shattered Realms, because I read it first, don't ask me why I read them in the wrong order, but I'm like really attached to those characters and just the whole like thing. And again, it's kind of the like dragons, and then you get baby dragons and they like bond with the humans, and I love that element to it. And I just really love like all the characters, and the kind of, I actually really like the themes of like legacy for some of the characters, because we are kind of following a generation down, so you're seeing the characters who sort of have these like almost famous parents, and I love seeing that kind of exploration. And yeah, I just really like all the characters. I feel like I'm trying to remember what happens to give you a very vague synopsis, but basically the the overarching theme of the series is there are certain characters who have these mage marks on the back of their neck. I think there's only about 3 of them who are main characters, that they are essentially being hunted by this Empress Celestine for some kind of unknown reason. And so those characters are sort of new characters, but then their storylines are kind of coinciding with some of the descendants of the first series. So basically in the first book, we're following Ash, who is the daughter of Hannah Racer. No, he's not the daughter, he's the son of Hannah Racer from the first series. And he is trying to avenge someone and avenge against this like really nasty king. So he sort of goes to the king's court and poses as like a horse healer, but at the same time is trying to poison the king. And while he's there, he crosses paths with Jenna, who is mage marked, and she's kind of being hunted by this empress. So that's kind of the first book, and then the subsequent books follow slightly different characters. But yeah, I love all the characters, they're really great. And I don't think enough people have read Cindy Williams-Chalmers books, so get on that, people. Yeah. And then also a middle grade series which I really love is Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger. I just love these. These are probably my favourite middle grade series. I also really love Wondersmith. That's not this. What is the series called? I don't even know what the series is called. What's the first one called? Yeah, no, the second one's called Wondersmith. What is the first one called? Nevermore. But anyway, Keeper of the Lost City. So following Sophie, who discovers she is an elf, and she's basically whisked away to these magical elven cities called the Lost Cities. And there she like enrolls in this elven academy and goes on loads of adventures with her friends. And just seeing her kind of journey throughout the series and like watching her grow up and grow into this kind of leadership role, because Sophie's kind of at the heart of quite a few different conspiracies within the elven world. And I just really love some of the themes the series like tackles. Like it talks a lot about kind of grief, and also Sophie's perspective like as a human looking in on the elven world, because from like the elven world seems like it's almost like utopia, but actually there's quite a lot of problems with it, and Sophie kind of has this like new perspective. And I just love all the characters, and like the friendships are done so well. And yeah, so I just really enjoyed that whole series. Would highly recommend if you're looking for like a new middle grade series. And also if you want like all my middle grade favourites, I have a video of middle grade favourites if you want more recommendations on that front. But I feel like Keep the Lost Cities is my favourite, and I'm really excited for book 9, which I think is going to be the final book, which is kind of sad, but also I feel like it's a 9-book series, so it has gone on a bit. But yeah, would highly recommend. What I'm going to talk about is the Chorus of Dragons series, the first one being The Rune of Kings by Jen Lyons. And this series is just completely chaotic, and I don't think it's for everyone, but I love it. I love the characters. They're all such disaster bisexuals, and just everything is so epic, and like there's so much going on, and like so many great characters on kind of all different sides of the sort of events and various different levels of morally greyness. And just Kieran, who's the main character, is just this little himbo, and I just love him. He's so like, I feel like especially in the first book he's quite passive, but I really like him. And just the kind of following events of the story, it's very convoluted, and there's a lot of convoluted like family politics, which I really like, and I like all the different working out all the different like ties between different characters. There's also quite a bit of like, not quite reincarnation, but characters who are kind of soul swapped with other characters. So certain characters are in certain characters' bodies, and there's a lot of like convoluted stuff going on, but I really enjoy that. It's definitely quite a crazy series, and a lot goes on, and it has like a low key level of cheese, which especially in book 4 which I actually really love, and I feel like it just ticks all my boxes, I guess. Like I love the characters, and I love the whole like convoluted plot, and I just feel like it's kind of that chaotic epic fantasy vibes, which I really enjoy. So yeah, I would highly recommend. Again, yeah, I don't think it's for everyone. If you don't like sort of a lot of convoluted politics, I wouldn't recommend, or like characters who are slightly not super intelligent. I don't know, but I think they're really entertaining books, and I always just have such a great time while reading. and yeah, you get very invested in like the relationships and stuff. And yeah, so I would definitely recommend. I mean, it's one of my favourite series, but I just don't think it's quite a series for everyone. Like, I feel like Becky Chambers, everyone should read her books, but these ones are more like, if you think you'll like them, then you'll love it. I feel like they're kind of like Marmite, you either love it or hate it. But yeah, so anyway, I would recommend, but don't come crying to me if you don't like it. And I didn't even say what it was about, but it was essentially following Kieran in like 2 different times in his life. So he's kind of, at the book, he's in like a jail cell, and he's telling the story to Talon, who is this, I don't know how to explain what she is really, but essentially following him growing up, and he's discovered he's this like lost scion of this powerful house. So he kind of gets taken in by them. And then also we're following him a bit later in his life, and he's kind of sold to this Black Dagger Brotherhood, who are these like assassins, and then he goes to this magical island and trains with them, and then there's dragons and things start kicking off. And then there's a lot of, throughout, I think one thing I really love about the books is the god characters. There's like 8 immortals who are sort of like gods, but they're also kind of like people, and their kind of role in the story. And I love how history like keeps coming back to bite them in the butt type thing. So yeah, I really love this series. So I hope you all enjoyed the video. I had a really fun time filming this. I just love gushing about my favourites. And yeah, definitely let me know in the comments what your favourite like books or series of all time is. I'm sure there's something I've forgotten from this list. But yeah, I was trying to keep it reasonably limited, otherwise I'd be talking for hours. I would really love to know. And yeah, I'm going to film another video, I think, of my favourite standalones, because like there's some books which I really love, like Sword of Kagan, which I didn't include in this series because they're not, I didn't include in this video because they're not series, essentially. But yeah, I hope you're all having a really great day, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you're not already. Subscribe? Yeah, consider subscribing if you're not already. Anyway, bye bye!